Hold on. I saw a tweet thread that I want to unwind with you guys. Think we can do that? Anti-nuptial turn among young women and adolescent girls is disastrous. From new Pew Research, high school girls' interest in marriage drops 20 plus percentage points in last 30 years. Damn. And men are right at the same, or boys, I guess, are right at the same point. That's crazy. Wonder why? We're headed down the South Korea path. That's not good. That's not good at all. What does anyone get out of marriage besides a tax benefit? Well, it's more that the sharp drop in interest from girls who, used to be the more marriage crazy of the two sides. It probably speaks to a shift in how young girls perceive boys, which right, there's a gender disparity there. It's interesting at the very least. There was an article that found that the U.S. birth rate, if you ignore first-generation immigrants, is worse than Japan. Really? Can you link that? It's because men suck and there's a femicide? Men have always sucked and there's always been a femicide. Philosophy Tube just released a video about us being wrong about the birth rate. I watched it. It was a pretty bad video. I don't want to do the whole drama back and forth thing, but I found it extremely unconvincing and incurious. Might be worth asking what it is about high school boys that girls don't find appealing. I have a feeling the list is long and informative. And then from Ryan Grimm, interestingly, there's no place for this kind of bigotry in a decent society. No decent person on the left would ever dream of saying something this hateful towards all girls, and it's not okay to say about boys. I think it's okay to say about both groups if it's true. It's not really hateful. Um, you know? It's not really like a hateful thing to say. You're referring to a tendency. Not even a hostile tone? Yeah. I graduated high school 6 months ago and can confidently tell you that a third of high school boys at maximum see girls/women as people. What's the number, Wumbo Bongo? I'm doing a thing right now. What's the number for native-born Americans? Or, I don't know, whatever term you want to use. 2019, 1.7? Well, we'll give Masaigu the opportunity to find their article. No, but really, here's an excerpt of a letter from the girls in my high school. Oh, there's Masaigu. Addressed to school administrators, written 1 year before I started high school there. The sooner everyone accepts that little boys are actually monsters, the sooner we can start problem solving. Issue Pornhub. The first issue we'd like to address is the most recent event. This week, numerous girls in the senior grade receive emails from Pornhub and other inappropriate sites asking to confirm their email, some even using their school email for a newly made account. Each recipient had a personalized username. While some boys received emails, the usernames written for girls and LGBTQ students were particularly disgusting, attacking physical appearance, religion, sexuality, race, gender identity. Below are only some of the usernames we received. We decided to share them to highlight the severity of the issue at hand. Dirty Jew bitch, ugly monster bitch, N-word. Yeah. Okay, you get the... Wait, why are they censoring sex but not the N-word? That's crazy. Yeah, peak 2025. Yeah, I don't know. Seems pretty bad. I don't know if this is necessarily indicative of anything because it could have been done by one person, but... Trends behind the historically low U.S. birth rate. Over the last 15 years, the East Asian country of Japan has seen its population decline amid low birth rates and falling marriage rates. Last year, more than 2 people died for every 1 baby born in Japan. Ew. A net loss of almost 1 million people. In April, the CDC announced the total fertility rate in America was 1.6 women per children. Breaking down the data. Women per children? Children per women. Per woman. Woman. Ideally, you want like 0.5 women per children, right? Fear of economic decline. So where's the data on what this looks like without the immigration? Yeah, Masaigu, does this data refer to what you're talking about? Wrong link. Ah, I see. Immigration accounts for entire U.S. population growth for first-time survey. That I'm familiar with. 3/4 legal status of some kind. People are saying, oh, the numbers. Who does that? I don't care. I'm bored now. Yeah, basically it's bad. It's probably going to get worse as well. I don't really know. Still, that data is pretty scary. About half of 12th graders say it's very likely they'll want kids if they marry. So back in 1993, yeah, look at the decline, man. very likely they want to have children dropped by like fucking a quarter from 64 to 48. It's strange asking 12th graders no, or am I strange? No, not at all. I think you can get a lot of useful social data off of like what people's family aspirations are if you ask them, at the end of high school, for sure. Why do you think this is happening? Do you think it's because women are repulsed by men? I mean, I don't know. I've seen the way young men act online, and it does give me the impression that like if you're in high school right now, a lot of the guys there have to be Nick Fuentes fans, right? Like there are a lot of fucking psychopath Groiper incel young men, because the red pill stuff back when I was in high school, the red pill was a thing, but that was more of a like aging loser thing. That was like a fedora wearing guy peacocking at the local bar or trying to impress college girls or whatever. um the movement for like hating women has really shifted downwards in age. Like young men have always been misogynistic, right? Like I'm not suggesting that's new or whatever. Just the systems that allow you to very aggressively target them with extremely misogynistic ideology and get them like caught in the short form content loop or whatever. That's reasonably new, you know? I'm Canadian and I've seen America First hats in my high school. That's cool. I've been noticing a lot of younger women talking about preferring slightly older men than their own age because they tend to be much more mature and less insane. That's probably not going to help with the demographic skew in the long run. I guess women tend to live a little bit longer, so fucking they're gonna be widowed at like 68 or something. Um, but yeah, there's always been an element of that, I suppose. I just wonder. I don't know. It's pretty bad. Unk decade, I suppose. Women have always preferred older men. I think that historically, the reason women have liked older men is because marriage has been the only way for women to achieve financial stability. So, or one of the only ways. So, older men tend to have their careers more set. So, women see that as like they're skipping some of the early awkward, like finding your footing years career wise. But now, I don't think that's the case anymore. Women actually outperform men when it comes to college job interviews, stuff like that. So I think now it's more like if I date my own age, that kid is more likely to be a Hitlerite or whatever, which is probably a worse. I mean, they're both bad. The disparity is bad in either case. It's not good at all. Do you agree girls are expected to mature faster due to social pressure? Um, yeah, probably. It kind of feels like as a guy you're allowed to be a dipshit for longer. I was a dipshit for like way longer, you know? I feel like the women are just expected to be a little bit more self-conscious. It's one of the reasons I didn't like that philosophy tube video, you know? This subject is only going to get more and more attention with time. Like the gender disparity, the birth rates, all of this is going to become more and more of a mainstream issue. In Japan and South Korea, they've been like mainstream issues that are just talked about widely for decades. It'll happen here too. It'll happen everywhere, right? Everywhere that's affected by this. And I don't want only the far right to have like explanations for this. When people are talking about like legitimate real economic and political problems caused by the birth rate decline, I don't want the only motherfuckers out there with a solution to be, what if we did a white ethno state? What if we were more misogynistic? What if rape were legal? Like repeal the 19th, that's the moderate solution, you know? Like these can't be the only people with opinions on the subject, right? We have to develop our opinions a little bit preemptively. I don't get the issue. I don't see why the population needs to increase forever. It doesn't need to increase forever. It does, however, need to like stabilize. You want the population to stabilize. You don't want it to start slipping back down. That would be quite bad, especially because if it slips back down quickly, you get a very imbalanced population curve where the vast majority of people are old. And that's a real problem because old people drain more social resources, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. And it ends up placing a massive burden on the young, which makes it even harder for the young people to start new families, which kind of compounds the issue. Just like Italy right now, just like Italy, Britain, Japan, South Korea, everywhere. It's happening everywhere. It's just happening faster in Japan and South Korea and China. But what if the slipping back down is part of stabilizing? It's not. I promise you, it's not. We can just like level off, The slipping back down that we're describing is like actual social or civilizational collapse that could take centuries to recover from. The damage to your economy, to the infrastructure, that you would incur from like a massive population collapse is very, very, very difficult to deal with. With climate change and resource scarcity, shouldn't we lessen our population? Nah, I don't believe that bullshit. Listen, if climate change reduces our population, it'll be because of the fucking water wars or tsunamis or whatever. Um, we should not like I promise you that population collapse will only make these problems more difficult. You know, you do not want to be dealing with climate change and climate refugee crises and every single developed country is experiencing a simultaneous population collapse where 90% of the population is 40 years or older. You do not want to do all that at once. Japan could remedy the issue by being less racist and letting immigrants. Yeah, but that only works to a point, right? Like ideally your domestic population should be like you can I have nothing against subsidizing your birth rate with immigration, but that only works as long as there are excess immigrants to come in. And other countries' birth rates are also decreasing. So um you do need it's a band-aid fix, exactly. What about the Black Plague? It led directly to the Renaissance? No, it didn't. That's not how history works. The continent-spanning mega plague that killed like a significant portion of the population actually led to centuries of wretched suffering, and then little pockets that managed to flourish afterwards, in spite of it, developed into what we now call the Renaissance. That wasn't really. I think the Renaissance could have happened without the Black Plague. I don't know, Vosh, if there are less people, then less need to fight for resources. This This isn't a Civ game. We don't fight over resources. We produce the resources. We're humans. We make the environment. We're not all fighting over berries falling from a bush or apples from a tree. We make the resources. Humans are needed to produce these things. In fact, the more productive capacity we have, the more we've addressed these scarcity arguments. Humans faced scarcity back when we were hunter-gatherer tribes. How many deer were there? How many bushes with berries were there? That was scarcity. Now we produce mega farms. We could feed the entire planet. We produce an enormous oversupply of food. We should be feeding more efficiently, but we only do that because of our immense productive capabilities, which we need to maintain. I don't think we can produce helium or oil. We do not need to experience global population collapse to preserve the supplies of helium or oil. What are you guys talking about? Why are you being contrarian with me? Why do we do this every time? Why are you all doing Thanos bullshit? Why are you all pretending these Malthusian fucking arguments where you're like, well, maybe the human population should be reduced to just 3 billion. That would be sufficient. Of course, I would be one of those 3 billion. Shut up. No. We know for a fact that population collapses are really, really, really destructive, okay? It's just a fact. It's a fact. It's not ideology. You don't need to argue with me over it. I just don't think we should enable or I guess, allow the continuation of social trends that basically guarantee a global population collapse. It would be really destructive. I'm okay with the population like leveling off and decreasing a little bit over time, I guess, but it would have to be a stabilized reduction, not a collapse. Collapses are different from reductions. The people making these arguments are the young men girls don't want to date. No one but you is talking about population collapse. Reduction doesn't mean collapse. No, we're talking about collapse. You're reframing collapse as reduction because you're being difficult for no reason other than because, I don't know, you have nothing else to do right now. It's 1:20 p.m. PT on a Monday and you're not working. So I'm just going to assume that you have some leisure time to work with. But no, we're talking about population collapse. A reduction in population would be like maintaining a 1.9 children per woman birth rate over a century. That would reduce the population in a stable and sustainable fashion. A population collapse, where the birth rate spikes downward, the greater and greater percentage of the population is elderly, meaning more pressure is placed on the young people, so young people have even fewer children. That's a collapse. That's like over the course of a century, your population could reduce to like 1/3 of what it was, which is really bad. Yeah, but we're more productive now. Yeah, see how that productivity lasts when like 80% of the population is 50 or older. Our productivity isn't innate. It's the product of complicated like macroeconomic superstructures that we have to work to maintain. Couldn't young people have more kids because there will be more elderly to care for them? That's just not how it works. It just doesn't work that way. The elderly are not like a vague labor pool that you can pull from for free daycare. That's the shit you get with your family. Is your family willing to step up and do free daycare for 3 or 4 kids? That's just not how it happens. Look at Japan or South Korea right now, man. The people are having fewer kids than ever, and there's more and more pressure being put on the young people to be productive to make up for the aging population. Sure, but we could actually do that. No, no, we couldn't. Elderly people are not going to be conscripted into daycare, and you're not going to convince a bunch of young people to have lots and lots of kids when they're working all the time. Stop. If your potential solution for a global demographic problem is, well, what if people just started doing X? Then you don't have a real solution. You're acting like conservatives. Why can't we just take the subject seriously? Why can't we just take the topic seriously? Why would we acknowledge there is a global declining birth rate? It is reaching, like, it is significantly lower in many countries than replacement rate. It's a real problem. We should address it. We should talk about it. Japanese government has found that giving people large amounts of money, housing, etc., didn't really work to boost birth rates. Yeah, the bullshit that it's because of like people not having enough money has been a dog shit argument for ages. The population or the birth rate was higher 200 years ago when people had way less money. The birth rate has actually decreased in direct correlation with the average income of the average American, Like the more money and the more healthcare and the more social stability Americans have had, the fewer kids they've had. Daycare's a big one, Masaigu. So you and Elon agree? On what? We need to drink water? On what? It's the golden age of chat, not listening to anything Vosh has. No, they're always difficult about this topic. I don't know why. I don't know why. Vosh, why can't you imagine that people don't want to reproduce their childhood on people who and are afraid of the future? What the fuck are you talking? You're projecting. You're projecting your emotional problems on. I have not at any point said. I haven't said anything about intention or motivation. You're just explaining. If you don't want to have kids, that's fine. I'm not coming after you. I'm only talking about a general demographic trend all across the world, from America to Japan to Saudi Arabia, all across the world. Don't get in your head a bunch of other fucking arguments, okay? And then project them onto me. Not in developing countries? In developing countries too, yes. In developing countries too. You're asking the average voter to make rational decisions? Nope, I haven't asked anyone anything. I don't know why you're saying that. That would only make sense if I was asking people to do something. I haven't asked anyone to do anything. I'm just talking about an issue and saying it's an issue. Internet probably plays a role? Yeah, probably. Too busy playing, Hearts of Iron 5 or whatever. Crazy how much it's gone down. Here, let me find one with a more, like, crunched, range of data. Grouped by continents, sorted by fertility. You got Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, Oceania, and South America, who are well down there. But everyone's trending downward. We need to get to researching artificial wombs. Wouldn't it be more sensible to approach this more from like to talk about what's causing it and like what might be done to address it? I don't know. God damn, man, look at that. Just from 1970 onward, it's more than halved. What do you think we should do? You people are fake sociologists, you know that? You don't begin with the end in mind. You have to approach the topic with an inquisitive mindset, Even if I don't, so wait, your interest in examining the question is predicated on my having an answer? Me? Me specifically? You have to be curious about the question. You have to engage with it. There are some pretty obvious policies that you can implement, like free daycare or mandatory paternity leave that matches maternity leave. That would probably work to it to an extent. I feel like a society that encourages child rearing, to at least to some extent, is going to have like some gendered biases built into it, because there's just no getting around the fact that if you want every woman to have 2 kids, which means that for every woman who has one has to have 3. For every woman who has 0, 2 others have to have 1 more, or one has to have 4, etc. Like, that's a lot of time spent having fucking cravings and weird poops, right? For the mom. It's there's always going to be that bias built in. I don't really know. We need to make being a parent cool again. I do unironically think there is like a walkable neighborhood argument to this as well. I think that people would probably be more interested in being parents if the world catered to parents more. Because like society does not cater to parents at all. Having a kid makes you like a 100% inconvenience to everyone, right? No one gives you any fucking leeway. When you bring them on a plane, everyone's bitching about it, you know? You bring them in a grocery store, everyone's bitching about it. It used to be there were kids everywhere. If you were growing up in like the 1960s, 70s, fucking there were kids everywhere. Every young adult was a parent, so they were all swapping tips and helping each other and so on and so forth. But now everyone's like so self-actualized and so obsessed with their own hobbies that it's like, well, a kid's just a big inconvenience you have to deal with for 18 years. I do worry if the fundamental problem is just there's too much interesting stuff to do. Like back in the 1960s, your shitty ass fucking grayscale TV has three channels. You can watch a movie down at the cinema for a nickel, I guess. I don't know. Like, why not have a kid? What the fuck are you doing? Reading? Fuck that. But now it's like you can play Uma Musume on your phone. You know, you've got Cookie Clicker. People are watching movies on their second monitor while playing EU5 on their primary monitor, and on their phone they've got like an idle game going. I wonder if people are just too caught up in their dopamine cycles to feel much to feel the incentive, I guess, to have a kid, you know? And if that's the case, that might not be like a fixable problem normally. Because if you just made children socially unnecessary and vestigial, and then made life more interesting without kids, then I don't know how you incentivize people to have kids. Even if people like having kids. It probably also doesn't help. There's like a cumulative effect here where like if there are kids absolutely everywhere, it's easier to imagine your kids socializing and being normal. Whereas like if you have a kid now, like what, you have to raise them? Like you entirely? Like you can't really imagine them just going outside and playing with the neighborhood kids or whatever. Now it's like you have to supervise them 24/7. You're like the because society no longer caters to them. There's no longer a village to take care of them. So now you have to be. It's one of the reasons helicopter parents became a thing. It wasn't just like people incidentally decided to be more like that, you know. It was that as everyone stops playing outside, the expectations for raising a kid get higher. You know, the parents start getting like over involved, and you know that's its own issue. I don't know. Yeah, the social incentive structure just seems completely fucked right now. I don't think it's just money is the thing. A lot of people say like if you just give parents money or their social equality or whatever. No, no. I don't think that's the issue. Um, we do need to bring the village back, yeah. It's about time, not money. Yeah, but even if you gave people the time, what if they just want to play Uma Musume? I don't know. Not to mention, and this is more of a like a fundamental issue, I suppose, but it definitely isn't going to help if the gender disparity between boys and girls gets to a point where they're like marriage isn't even an aspirational thing. Jesus, only 60% of 12th grade girls want to get married? Really? 12th grade? They're like stupid. Shouldn't they think marriage is great? That's insane. You don't need to get married to have kids. Don't be naive. It's a in the mind, it's a package deal. We're talking about like the lifestyle you're working towards. There is a trend here. Um, I don't know. That's rough. No, I don't think gender equality necessarily helps. I don't think gender inequality helps either. You know, because the numbers are also closing in like Iran and Saudi Arabia. The birth rate in my UK city has fallen by 36% the last 10 years. They keep shutting schools. That's fucking grim. Bristol's birth rate is falling more rapidly than that of any other city in England and Wales. 21% reduction in the past decade. In Bristol, the birth rate's fallen by 36% in the past decade. Yeesh. In Bristol, a birth rate of 1.14. God damn. Imagine having kids in like when in your entire neighborhood, your whole block, there's like one other kid. Why would anyone want to get legally? Zigabiz, you're projecting again. We're talking about 12th grade girls, okay? Um, the significant decline in their interest in marriage with no change in boys' interest in marriage of the same age, it indicates something. And it's not like a cynical interpretation of marriage being for tax benefits. It's a more immediate difference in their environment. The availability of birth control is also a big contributing factor. If people couldn't really choose whether or not they got pregnant, that would make it a lot more difficult to not get pregnant. But the that seems like you know, you're introducing rats to your restaurant to take care of the cockroach problem, right? I don't really think that fixes anything. Oh no, now we got the birth rates up, but fucking there's rape and unplanned pregnancy everywhere. You know, I don't think that fixes it. I disagree. People aren't having as much sex in general. Sure, but the reason people aren't getting pregnant isn't because people are having less sex. It's because people want to get pregnant less. Especially these days in America, it's pretty easy to choose. Also, Vosh, I was reading yesterday that teen pregnancy falling is a big part of this. Is that true? Yeah, teen pregnancy has plummeted over the past 30 years, which is great. But teen pregnancy did make up a pretty decent chunk of the birth rate. So I guess the hope would have been that it would have been displaced downwards, right? So the girls having kids at 17 would turn into girls having kids at 22 or something. But obviously, there was just like a decline all across the board, you know? Honestly, that's quite impressive, all things considered. Yeah, believe it or not, in spite of everything going on and all the news and everything, the amount of like pound for pound pedophilia in the world is probably way lower than it used to be, right? Like basically it's so easy to look into even the relatively recent past, and it's like, dude, 30-year-old men were marrying high school girls all the fucking time. Yeah, we've narrowed it down, so now it's just the Republicans doing it. Yeah, exactly. Genuine question: if the previous birth rates more or less depended on things like women not being able to choose as much and teens being impregnated earlier, doesn't that mean we're building an entirely new system for encouraging birth from here on out? Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's probably true. It feels like it's a new paradigm entirely. We're not just trying to like shore up numbers that used to exist. We're trying to build an entirely new incentive structure for having kids. Because the old incentive structure was like, well, you need kids to work the farm, and half of them are going to die anyway, so you might as well have a lot, right? And then it was well, the wars ended and we live in a, you know, cut off suburban household now. The women have literally nothing to do but stay at home and get pregnant, so they might as well do that a bunch and keep the family going or whatever. um you know, why else live in this oversized house in the suburbs? But nowadays, it seems like we've kind of run out of reasons. Now, the only reason you would have a kid is because you want to have a kid, you know? Oh, God. Don't leave. Please, just this is just incentives 101. Do not leave a civilizationally necessary part of our social infrastructure up to people's whims, right? Like, we do not keep the sewers functioning because people want to keep the sewers functioning. No, we pay people to do it, actually. Um, it's we've kind of we've run out of natural incentives for birth. We need to find new ones somehow. So making being a mom a job. Um, I feel like it'd be really, really easy to abuse the state paying people for house labor. That being said, it is labor. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. You would have to. I think you would have to recreate the village. I think you would have to invest a lot, and I mean a lot of resources, social resources, into the recreation of the village. You want it to feel like a community project, basically. And that would take a lot of money. I mean, a huge amount of money, right? And I don't know if that would literally translate into paying women to have kids, because I don't think that would necessarily fix it itself. I think it's more like we would have to treat the project of having kids and raising them as like a great social effort that we're all working together on. Like we would have to have the same attitude towards it that we've had towards like wartime in World War II, right? People are carpooling, people got victory gardens, you know, everyone's like invested in the project. If you're in a neighborhood and you know, you don't have kids or whatever, it's like, okay, maybe you don't have kids, but you are going to come down to the like, you know, the village and help out, right? You're going to come on down and like help raise kids or whatever. You know, you got to pitch in, don't you? You're not going to just sit there and do nothing. There's like a social incentive to contribute, because right now parents are so alienated. Parents are so like, they're just like, you have to take care of a kid on your own. That's crazy. No one ever did that. No one in all of human history. We have never asked, like, okay, who's taking care of this kid who was just born? Well, it's the two parents and fucking literally nobody else. That's crazy. You would always have like multi-generational households, or family, or like a community, or you live in a village, or it's medieval times and you literally have a village. But now it's just, nope, it's just fucking you two. Treating it like a big social project. I guess that's not really a very concrete answer, huh? Like, that's not exactly a government program. So far, government programs to encourage higher fertility rates usually just turn into like, give parents money per birth, or like in Russia, the have teenagers get pregnant camp. You know, those patriot camps where they're like, you know, great glorious Russian teens go over there and have nothing to do but fuck, and it didn't do anything or fix anything. Because even after if a girl gets pregnant there and then goes back home, she's in the middle of fucking nowhere, right? Like, imagine being a Russian girl and you go over to Patriot camp or whatever. You come back pregnant. Do you know the dad? Do you know anything? You go back, you're with your parents, you're in the middle of fucking nowhere. You still have no economic opportunity. Like, it doesn't fix anything. The easiest part of raising children is getting a bitch pregnant. That's the easiest fucking part. That shit's so easy you can do it accidentally. Many do. Vosh, come on, children were not even considered special or worthy of protection for most of history. They just happen to get used for labor as early as possible. That's not really true. But also, well, wait, if your argument is that we were a lot more callous towards the health of children, but back when like half of them died before the age of 5, the answer there is clearly yes. But there was still a greater social effort towards the management of the community, like in European villages or whatever. I mean, I'm kind of speaking broadly because we're talking like thousands of ethnic groups and cultures and communities and civilizations all around the world over a very long period of time. But you know, I'm not saying that the kids were coddled, but there was more of a communal effort, at least within the family, towards taking care of people. You know, they had to back in the villages. They had to back in the tribes or whatever. What about cultures in the world where community child raising is still more common? I would have to do like a country by country breakdown, you know? Because it's so complicated, but it's happening everywhere. And I really do think the common trends, the big two common trends are, well, the big three. One, capitalism. Your time is a resource that should be expended to maximize capital value, right? Unlike feudalism, the idea of like a serf that just has to generate a sufficient amount of resources from the land they're given by the Lord, now your time is a resource that has to be invested to maximize gains. That's different than the way things used to be, you know? It's not like everyone back in the tribal days, like the hunter-gatherer days, were out there being like, I have 14 hours of daylight. I am going to optimize my time. Don't get me wrong. They worked really hard, but there was plenty of evidence to suggest like widely practiced leisure culture back then, you know? They didn't think about, they weren't like trying to optimize on that shit, you know? That's one. Two, everyone got their dang iPhones. For three, birth control. I think it's those main things. It's capitalism. It's everyone's got more interesting shit to do than raise some blubbering fucking 2-year-old. And three, people can choose whether or not the bitch gets pregnant now. Serfs literally didn't have shit to do all winter, man. Objectives survive. Fucking the moment it turns November, you know, you shove all the work tools in the closet, you bring out the cozy sweaters. It's like, all right. And you just make babies, lol. Yeah, you be fucking because you want to stay warm. Sorry, I know a lot of people get really like cynical or weird about the topic, but I hope now that we've talked about it a little more, everyone kind of understands where I'm coming from. This isn't like an Elon Musk, um, fake crisis, birth rate, white nationalist, blah blah blah. It's like an actual issue. I just think it has to be approached with a bit of. It has to be taken seriously. That's all. That's the main thing I care about because what we've just talked about over the past hour is we've addressed this topic at a level that is well beyond the average person who talks about this, right? The average conversation on this subject is some mindless retard fucking right-wing dogma, ethno-nationalist horseshit, right? It's totally divorced from reality. It has nothing to do with improving anything for anybody. And this was a lot better. So what I want is for the left or people broadly to have the ability to talk about this in a more nuanced way, because these conversations are going to come up. 100% they're going to come up. There's no getting around it. The birth rates are falling. This is going to become more and more of a mainstream problem as time goes forward. And it is a problem. Vosh, you still talk about it from a man's perspective. Well, sure. What do you want me to do? Transition? Don't answer that. But I would like to believe. And look, pardon me for let me don my like a world's greatest feminist sash, right? But I think everything that I've said here like takes into account the experience from a woman's perspective, right? Like I'm not. What I'm not doing is taking for granted that women want or can handle or are interested in or aren't bothered by the expectations of child rearing. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to approach this from more of a like, we have to build the incentives. Women have to want to have and raise kids, you know? I'm not taking for granted the idea that like, well, it's just natural for them to. I guess it is, like in a strictly like, like biological mandate sense or whatever, but obviously, there are lots of things that are natural that are not necessarily good, like morally good. People have to want it, you know? Oh yeah, I saw this. Elon saying the Roman Empire collapsed because of the population collapse. And Roman Nerd said, no, no, that's not what happened actually. It fell for different reasons. Elon said, read more. Roman Helmet Guy says, Elon, I'm underemployed reading primary sources from Roman history all day while you are running 5 companies. I'm sorry, but I know more about Rome than you. No, you don't. Played a lot of Civ games. And Roman Helmet Guy is also wrong. All I know is that Elon is wrong. That's the only thing I need to know. It's the only thing I care about. I'm not a Rome guy. Rome probably fell for a bunch of reasons. Yes, actually, I'd listen to a trans woman or any woman over the view of a man who probably doesn't think about being a woman much. Okay, wait, genuine. Hold on 1 second. Can we leave this kind of id pull in the past? All right. Would you go to Candace Owens for her take on black issues? Sorry, that's being uncharitable. I guess what I mean to say is like, if you think there's an element of the conversation that's missing, I think you should be able to point to it and not just vaguely allude to it. Like, you could say, well, I think this is coming from the perspective of whiteness, right? Like this is a whiteness informed take. And like, yeah, I guess I can't really counter that. I don't really think we've talked about anything here that's sort of presumptuous or inaccurate with regard to like women or non-white people or whatever else. I'm just saying it's a global problem, you know. I mean, fuck, the 2 countries that people talk about most in the context of population decline are South Korea and Japan, and to my knowledge, those aren't white countries. Um, for woke 2, we do have to leave the Ed Pool stuff behind for sure. The problem is women be shopping. That's fucking true. That's true. The system very clearly views women as incubators, not human. Well, a big problem with the conversations that we have about fertility is that a lot of people do assume, yeah, women will just have kids if they're given the opportunity to. People don't think about it as an incentive thing. They just think that because women naturally can produce children and that's the natural order, that as long as there are no impediments to them doing so, um, they'll have it. And I guess that's always been my problem with the argument that people just need more money or more housing or whatever, leaving aside the fact that it's just historically falsifiable. It also kind of suggests, why do women not want to have kids? Well, it just must be that they can't, but if they could, they would. I don't know. Really? Women also do be playing Uma Musume. It's complicated. Yeah, they be playing Stardew Valley. That's true. That's fucking true. Yes, sir. Or I should say yes, ma'am. Possibly. I didn't check your name. Um, I think you touched on it a little, but I think a large part of it is a social isolation of having kids. You can't go out, you can't party. Well, I did kind of talk about that, but yeah, no, I mean it's kind of a daycare thing as well. It is insane that you have to like sacrifice your social life on an altar as a young adult if you want to have a kid because nobody has a multi-generational household and nobody has like accessible daycare that's available going on. Like for one, I'm sorry, this might sound fucking crazy. Wouldn't daycare should be 24/7. Like daycare should be there should be like massive buildings that are paid for by the state, and if you want to drop your kids off there for a given length of time, you should be able to do that. Day and night care. Yeah. And you can just do that. I don't know. Like you shouldn't leave your kids there for fucking 3 days in a row or whatever, but I mean like it does seem kind of weird that it's only during the work hours because you have to get a babysitter otherwise. But that's its own whole fucking thing. Or maybe I don't know, state subsidized babysitters. Wait, am I onto something there? I'm rambling. I'm rambling. I need to hold on 1 second.